What was Article 6 of the United States Constitution?
It dealt with the Supremacy Clause.
It did. And the Supremacy Clause, Andrew, basically said what?
The federal has supreme law of the land.
Federal government, the federal Constitution and all laws passed in pursuance thereof are going to be the supreme law of the land. So if there is a state law that differs, the federal Constitution always, in theory, is supposed to win. Yes?
Well, what we just talked about in the other class was if the federal government can't make a law telling all the states to do something like the drinking age, they can just, use a little coercion to say, all right, if everybody follows our law, we'll give you extra money. So in de facto, it's a federal law.
Okay, there is that. The other thing is, go back to the medicinal marijuana, and I believe everybody has talked about that now. When you think about medicinal marijuana, federal law says no. A number of states, going on 14 if New Jersey does it, says yes, it is allowed, and the state laws are actually winning at this point. So sometimes you can pass a federal law that doesn't get enforced, and sometimes the federal government can do certain things like you're talking about that isn't really a federal law that kind of dictates federal conduct. Go ahead, Sarah. Yeah.
They invaded her home and they took her marijuana, but she said California law says that she
That's
can't.
exactly.
But the federal law says that she can't.
That's right. And right now, under the Obama administration, they've said it is illegal to have medicinal marijuana, but we are not going to use federal folks to enforce that ban. So effectively, it is legal. Effectively, it is legal. Did I see, Mark, was it you?
I was going to ask about that.
Okay, you're going to ask about that. Go ahead, Mario. You're good? Will, did you have something?
Wouldn't they still enforce it across state lines then?
If it's medicinal marijuana and you go from one state where it's legal to another, they would probably still allow it because it's medicinal marijuana with a valid prescription. But if you cross state lines into a state where it wasn't, even then they probably wouldn't, but the state would because it wouldn't be legal in that particular state. It's confusing, and that's part of the problem with medicinal marijuana. Yes, ma'am? They did. They used interstate commerce. That's more for Chapter 3. Let me go ahead and wrap this one up, and then we'll go into, or pardon me, the federalism chapter, the third chapter. Go ahead, Mario.
Which one was the Schoolhouse Rock?
What were the Schoolhouse Rocks? Because there were two. Okay, there was the preamble, and there was the Declaration of Independence. Make sure that you don't confuse the Declaration with the Constitution, because that's easy to do sometimes. What was the trick with those? Anything at all that you remember? Yeah.
It was like, isn't it to convince children to promote democracy?
Yeah, you're basically socializing kids to buy into the system. You're kind of teaching them a little bit about government. Most of the time it's true, but not always. There were some exceptions to that. Mark, did you have something?
Like the girl who couldn't reach, or the girl who couldn't reach for the ballot?
Yeah. What about that? What was the deal with that?
Women and voting?
Women couldn't vote. They made it look like she couldn't vote because she was too short or too much of a little kid, but really women couldn't vote because they were women. So they kind of play with that sometimes. If you remember, what was the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? What's life? What's life's life? Okay, what else? Be a little bit more specific. What was life again? Go ahead, Ben.
Well, many different people have different what life is. Some say it's to fight Roe v. Wade, others say it's against the death penalty, but life, they don't really define it.
For Declaration of Independence purposes, and you hear the phrase life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, what does it mean to be able to enjoy the right of life? For Declaration purposes going 200 years back.
Do what you want.
Do what you want, within reason, but basically to pursue an education, to pursue a certain career, to live, liberties. Okay, so you've got life. What was liberty, though? What's that? Freedom like how?
As a nation?
Travel?
As a nation, as travel. What's that, Muhammad?
Your rights?
What rights?
Any kind of right to speech.
Okay, political rights. When you talk about life, you're talking about personal decisions. When you're talking about liberty, you're talking about political rights. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to vote, these kinds of things. And when you're dealing with the pursuit of happiness, what did that first mean?
Property.
It meant property. What did it mean in Schoolhouse Rock?
Sex.
It meant sex in Schoolhouse Rock. Yeah, I believe it was Annie that blurted that out in your class, if I'm not mistaken. So with this in mind, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness could mean property. Of course, women were considered property back then, or it could have meant maybe something a little bit more physical if you deal specifically with Schoolhouse Rock. What other questions do y'all have from the Constitution chapter, chapter 3? What was stare decisis? Because I gave you 2 examples of this. Go ahead, Andrew.
Just let the previous decision stand.
Let the decision stand. The idea is that if the Supreme Court has ruled on a given subject, what you want to do as a justice is you want to rule on future cases considering that earlier decision, ruling consistently with it. So there were 2 examples that I gave you. What were the 2 for stare decisis? Go ahead, Rebecca.
One of them was
Mitch, I'm sorry.
one of them was with the kids who wouldn't say the Pledge of Allegiance.
One of them was with the kids who wouldn't say the Pledge of Allegiance, the Jehovah's Witnesses in West Virginia. And what was the bigger one?
Abortion.
Abortion was.
Way, they had this Supreme Court rule that a woman could choose to have abortion or not, and they used that as base ruling. They haven't been able to change that.
They haven't been able to change it. The Republicans have said at different points that if we can get a majority of conservative justices on the court, we can overturn abortion. What's the rule about stare decisis that kind of suggests that they never will? Go ahead.
Because it's been so many years and it's such a strong precedent it won't pass. Even though there have been like little frill things like the partial birth abortion.
Yeah.
But overall, it's going to stay intact.
Yeah, the idea is that the longer a case stays good law, the less likely that it's ever going to be over.